By 1944, military police across every Allied front were confiscating thousands of enemy items every month. Regulations were explicit. Soldiers were permitted to carry issued equipment and nothing else. Enemy weapons, insignia, and documents were to be surrendered immediately for intelligence processing. Anything taken without authorization was contraband, subject to confiscation, disciplinary action, and in serious cases, courts-martial. But regulations written far from the front rarely survived the reality of combat. Men who had killed, who had watched friends die, who had taken ground at the cost of everything they had. Those men wanted something to show for it, something tangible, something the Army said they couldn't have. Officers looked the other way. Sergeants pretended not to notice. And across every theater, soldiers smuggled, hid, and carried enemy trophies they were never supposed to possess. Some were forbidden for practical reasons, others for security. A few carried consequences so severe that possession alone could change a man's fate. These are the 10 banned World War II trophies soldiers risked everything to take. We're starting at number 10 and counting down to the one trophy no rule could stop soldiers from taking. Number 10. Enemy helmets, the trophy that marked you as a target. The enemy helmet was the most visible trophy a soldier could carry. It announced itself. Strapped to a pack, slung from a belt, or worn as a grim joke, a German Stahlhelm or Japanese Army helmet told everyone exactly what its owner had done. It was proof of contact, proof of survival, proof that the man carrying it had faced the enemy and walked away. That visibility was precisely the problem. Military regulations in multiple armies discouraged or prohibited the carrying of enemy headgear for reasons that had nothing to do with discipline. The concern was identification. A soldier wearing or carrying an enemy helmet created confusion, particularly at night, at distance, or in the chaos of fluid combat. Friendly fire incidents involving misidentified silhouettes were documented throughout the war. In the Pacific, the problem was acute. Japanese helmets had a distinctive profile. American troops who mounted them on packs or vehicles risked drawing fire from their own side, men trained to shoot at that shape before asking questions. Officers warned their troops repeatedly. Some units imposed fines or extra duties for soldiers caught carrying enemy helmets. Others confiscated them outright, citing safety rather than regulation, but the helmets kept appearing. They were too easy to take, too satisfying to display. A helmet was large, unmistakable, and required no explanation. It said everything without a word. Soldiers accepted the risk of friendly fire. They accepted the lectures and the confiscations. They strapped enemy helmets to their gear anyway, because the need to prove what they had survived was stronger than any regulation written by men who had never been there. The helmet was the most dangerous trophy to carry openly, and one of the most common. Number 9. Nazi flags and banners, the symbol too dangerous to display. Few trophies carried the same weight as a Nazi flag. Soldiers who captured them understood what they held. These were not simply pieces of cloth. They were the visible symbols of an ideology that had consumed a continent, the banners that had flown over rallies, government buildings, and occupied territories. Taking one meant tearing down what the enemy believed in. That symbolism was exactly why possession was complicated. Military regulations did not universally ban captured flags, but they imposed regulations that made keeping them difficult. Enemy materials with potential intelligence value, including flags that might indicate unit identification or location, were supposed to be turned over for processing. Flags taken from government buildings or official installations were sometimes claimed as unit property rather than individual trophies. More practically, displaying Nazi symbols created problems that extended beyond paperwork. Soldiers who hung swastika flags from vehicles or displayed them openly risked being photographed, and those photographs could be used by enemy propaganda to suggest American or British troops were embracing Nazi imagery rather than defeating it. Military censors were sensitive to this possibility. Commanders who discovered prominent flag displays sometimes ordered them removed or confiscated. The flags also attracted attention from military police and rear echelon personnel who had not experienced combat. A soldier carrying a Nazi banner through a supply depot faced questions he might not want to answer and scrutiny he could not afford. Despite this, the flags were taken, hidden in packs, mailed home in pieces, smuggled past inspections by men who believed they had earned the right to keep what they had captured. The swastika banner was a trophy that announced exactly what its owner had done, and exactly why he might not be allowed to keep it. Number 8. SS insignia and uniform pieces. The mark that could condemn you. There were enemy uniforms, and then there was the SS. To Allied soldiers, the distinction mattered. Regular Wehrmacht equipment was a trophy. SS insignia was something else entirely. The lightning bolts, the death's head, the runic symbols marked an organization that had committed atrocities across occupied Europe. Taking SS items was not just collecting a souvenir. It was claiming a piece of documented evil. That association created problems regulations could not fully address. Military authorities discouraged the collection of SS-specific items for reasons that went beyond standard trophy restrictions. Intelligence officers wanted SS materials for identification and prosecution purposes. Soldiers who pocketed SS collar tabs or cuff titles were potentially removing evidence that could be used to identify war criminals. More immediately, possession of SS insignia raised questions about how it had been obtained. The SS did not surrender easily. Soldiers who carried SS trophies had often taken them from dead men or from prisoners who might not have survived the encounter. Officers who discovered collections of SS insignia sometimes investigated their origins, aware that the taking could have involved actions that violated the laws of war. For soldiers, the calculation was different. SS insignia was rare. It marked contact with the most feared enemy formations. A soldier who carried an SS Death's Head had proof that he had faced something worse than ordinary combat and survived. The insignia was hidden, sewn into jacket linings, tucked into personal effects, mailed home with letters that explained nothing about where the items came from. Some soldiers kept them for decades without ever showing them to anyone. The SS trophy was not just forbidden, it was haunted. If you are following this countdown, you already understand these were not accidents. These were choices, and the consequences only get heavier from here. Number 7. Captured enemy sidearms, the pistol you were never supposed to carry. Military regulations across Allied forces were explicit. Soldiers were issued specific weapons and expected to carry nothing else. Captured enemy sidearms were contraband. The reasoning was straightforward. Non-standard weapons created identification problems in combat. A soldier carrying a German pistol could be mistaken for the enemy by his own side, particularly at night, in confusion, or at the moment when a silhouette determined who lived and who died. Ammunition could not be resupplied through normal channels. If a weapon malfunctioned, armorers had no parts and no obligation to repair it. And if a soldier was captured carrying an enemy pistol, the consequences were unpredictable. Regulations required that captured weapons be turned in to intelligence units. Officers conducted inspections specifically to identify and confiscate unauthorized sidearms. Soldiers caught with enemy pistols faced confiscation, disciplinary action, and in some units, formal charges. But the pistols were kept anyway. A captured enemy sidearm was proof of something no issued weapon could demonstrate. It meant the soldier had been close enough to take it, from a body, from a prisoner, from a position overrun at close quarters. It was personal in a way that nothing from supply could match. German pistols were especially prized. The P-38 was reliable, modern, and superior to some Allied sidearms in handling and capacity. Even the officers who confiscated them sometimes understood why soldiers wanted to keep them. The practice was universal. American troops carried German pistols. British commandos kept Walters and Lugers tucked alongside issued Webleys. Soviet soldiers accumulated enemy sidearms in numbers that suggested collection rather than necessity. The regulations existed. The confiscations happened. And still, the pistols traveled home, hidden in packs, mailed in pieces, carried by men who had decided that what they had taken was worth whatever punishment might follow. By this point, the pattern should be clear. Some of these trophies were about proof. Others were about prestige. Which one so far do you think carried the greatest risk, and why? Number 6. Japanese officers' swords, the blade that carried a death sentence. In the Pacific Theater, no trophy carried more weight than a Japanese officer's sword. The katana and its shorter variants were not simply weapons. They were symbols of the officer class, of samurai tradition, of an enemy culture that Allied troops found alien and often incomprehensible. A Japanese sword was exotic, beautiful, and unmistakably valuable. It was also extraordinarily dangerous to possess. Regulations in the Pacific Theater restricted the taking of Japanese swords for reasons that extended beyond standard trophy policies. The swords were classified as weapons, not souvenirs. Soldiers carrying them could be charged with possessing unauthorized arms. Some commands required that captured swords be turned in for disposal or official retention, but the real danger was not disciplinary. Japanese forces did not treat the capture of officer swords lightly. Reports circulated, some documented, others anecdotal, that American soldiers found carrying Japanese swords were treated more harshly upon capture. The sword represented honor. Taking it was an insult that demanded response. Whether these reports were universally accurate or exaggerated by rumor, their effect was real. Soldiers who carried Japanese swords understood they were increasing their risk if taken prisoner. And still, the swords were kept. Their value was too great, their meaning too profound. A man who carried a Japanese officer's sword had taken something that could not be replaced, a trophy that told a story no medal could match. Soldiers hid them, mailed them home in sections, bribed supply clerks to ship them with official cargo. The swords traveled across the Pacific, wrapped in blankets, packed in crates, and smuggled past every inspection that tried to stop them. The Japanese sword was forbidden, it was dangerous, and it remained one of the most sought-after trophies of the entire war. Number 5. Gold teeth and body loot. The trophy that crossed every line. Some trophies were taken from the dead in ways that regulations could not address with simple confiscation. The practice of extracting gold teeth from enemy corpses was documented across multiple theaters, most notoriously in the Pacific. Soldiers used knives, pliers, and bayonet points to remove dental gold from Japanese dead, and sometimes from Japanese wounded who were not yet dead. Military regulations prohibited the mutilation of enemy remains. The practice violated the laws of war, military discipline, and basic standards of conduct that armies were expected to maintain. Soldiers caught extracting teeth faced severe punishment, including courts-martial and imprisonment. But enforcement was inconsistent. In the chaos of island campaigns, in the aftermath of battles that had killed friends and shattered units, officers did not always investigate what happened to enemy bodies. Some turned away deliberately. Others were simply overwhelmed by the scale of what surrounded them. The gold itself had value, enough to be traded, sold, or converted into cash that military pay could not match. But for many soldiers, the teeth were not about money. They were about something darker, a way of dehumanizing an enemy that had committed atrocities of its own. a response to the bodies of American dead that Japanese forces had mutilated in documented incidents. None of that made it legal. None of it made it right. What it made was common enough that military authorities eventually issued explicit orders prohibiting the practice, orders that acknowledged what was happening even as they failed to stop it. The gold teeth were hidden, carried in pockets and pouches, and sent home through mail channels that never inspected the contents closely enough to discover what they contained. Some soldiers kept them for life, never showing them to anyone. Others threw them away years later, unable to explain even to themselves what they had done or why. This is where the story becomes uncomfortable. Do you think desperation explains actions like this, or is there a point where survival stops being an excuse? Number 4. Booby-trapped souvenirs. The trophy that killed you. Not every forbidden trophy was banned because of regulations. Some were forbidden because they exploded. German and Japanese forces both employed booby traps designed to kill soldiers who could not resist taking enemy equipment. Helmets wired to grenades, pistols connected to hidden charges, flags rigged to detonate when lifted. Watches, lighters, and personal effects left where retreating forces knew advancing troops would find them. Military authorities issued repeated warnings. Training emphasized that enemy equipment should not be touched until cleared by engineers or ordnance personnel. Soldiers were ordered to assume that anything left behind was potentially lethal. The warnings were not always heeded. Documented incidents describe soldiers killed or maimed by booby-trapped trophies they could not resist picking up. A German officer's belt, a Japanese flag draped over a bunker entrance, a ceremonial dagger left on a table in an abandoned command post. Each one represented temptation, and each one could represent death. The practice of booby-trapping souvenirs was deliberate psychological warfare. It forced advancing troops to choose between caution and the human impulse to take something from a defeated enemy. It punished greed, curiosity, and the desire for proof of victory. Some soldiers learned from the deaths of others. They waited for clearance. They let engineers do their work. Others did not. The booby-trapped trophy was not banned by regulation. It was banned by physics, the simple reality that what looked like a prize could be carrying enough explosive to kill everyone within 10 meters. And still, soldiers reached for them. Because the desire to take something was stronger than the knowledge of what it might cost. We are past the halfway point now, and the stakes are about to change. What comes next is not just about discipline or danger. It is about why men risked everything for objects that could not save them, could not feed them, and could not bring them home. Number 3. Classified enemy documents. The paper that could end a war or end you. Not all trophies were weapons or symbols. Some were paper, and paper could be the most dangerous trophy of all. Across every theater, soldiers encountered enemy documents in abandoned positions, captured command posts, and the personal effects of dead or surrendered officers. Maps, code books, operational orders, intelligence assessments, technical manuals for equipment the Allies had never seen. Regulations were absolute. All captured documents were to be turned over immediately to intelligence personnel. Soldiers were not qualified to assess what was valuable and what was not. A scrap of paper that looked meaningless to an infantryman might contain information that could save thousands of lives or reveal Allied intentions if it fell back into enemy hands. The consequences of keeping classified documents were severe. A soldier caught with enemy intelligence materials faced charges that went far beyond simple trophy violations. Unauthorized possession of classified information, even enemy information, could result in imprisonment, court-martial, and in extreme cases, accusations of espionage or collaboration. The Army did not distinguish between a soldier who kept a German map as a souvenir and one who might have intended to sell it. But soldiers kept them anyway. The documents were small, easy to hide, and almost impossible to detect in a pack full of personal effects. A folded map could travel home in a letter. A German officer's notebook could disappear into a jacket pocket. Technical drawings could be mailed with no indication of their contents. The desire was understandable. These were objects that proved contact with the enemy's command structure, evidence of victories that infantry actions rarely documented. A soldier who possessed an enemy operation order had proof of something more significant than a helmet or a flag. That proof could also destroy him if discovered. The captured document was the trophy that looked harmless and weighed nothing. It was also the trophy that could end a military career or a freedom without warning. If you had found something like this, a map, an order, a code book, would you have turned it in immediately or kept it as proof of what you had seen? Number 2. Walther P-38, the better trophy. Before we reach number 1, we must address its rival. The Walther P-38 was not the most famous German pistol of the war, but to soldiers who knew weapons, it was often the better one. It was adopted by the Wehrmacht in 1938, and the P-38 was everything the older Luger was not. Easier to manufacture, cheaper to produce, more reliable under field conditions. Its double-action trigger allowed it to be carried with a round chambered safely, a feature the Luger lacked. Its design functioned in mud, sand, and snow without the precision machining the Luger required. Soldiers who captured P-38s understood immediately that they had taken a superior combat pistol. It used the same 9mm parabellum cartridge, but fed more reliably and handled better under stress. Regulations against captured enemy sidearms applied equally to the P-38. Military police confiscated them, and officers warned against carrying them. The risks of misidentification and ammunition shortage were identical, but soldiers who knew firearms often preferred the P-38 to the Luger. It was a practical choice rather than a romantic one. The P-38 was a working pistol, a weapon designed for combat rather than prestige. A soldier who carried one was choosing function over legend. Some men kept both. A Luger for the trophy case, a P-38 for the moments when a backup might actually matter. But in the end, the P-38 remained the second choice, not because it was worse, because it was not the Luger. Number 1. Luger P-08. The trophy no rule could stop. No weapon in World War II carried the same mystique as the Luger. It was not the most reliable pistol. It was not the easiest to maintain. It was not even the most effective sidearm Germany fielded during the conflict. But it was the most desired. To Allied soldiers, the Luger P-08 represented everything a trophy was supposed to be. It was beautiful, its toggle lock action unlike anything else in service, its lines elegant in a way that combat weapons rarely achieved. It was rare. By 1944, the Wehrmacht had largely replaced it with the P-38, making Lugers harder to find with each passing month. And it was iconic, associated with German officers, with the previous war, with an enemy that had conquered most of Europe. A Luger was not just a weapon, it was a statement. Military regulations prohibited its retention absolutely. Captured enemy weapons were to be turned in for intelligence evaluation. Officers reminded their troops repeatedly. Inspections were conducted specifically to identify and confiscate unauthorized sidearms. And still, Lugers disappeared by the thousands. Soldiers wanted them. The pistol represented something that no regulation could address: the need to possess physical proof of what they had survived. A man who captured a Luger felt he had earned it. No paperwork, no order, no threat of discipline was going to change that. Some were taken from surrendered officers. Others were pulled from holsters on the battlefield. A few were traded, bartered, or stolen from depots where captured weapons were stored. Soldiers hid them in packs, wrapped them in uniforms, mailed them home in pieces. Some declared them openly, daring their superiors to confiscate them. Others kept them secret, knowing discovery meant losing the weapon and facing discipline. The risks were real. A Luger carried in combat created identification problems. Ammunition could not be resupplied. If a soldier was discovered with one during inspection, the consequences followed. But none of that mattered. The Luger was not carried because it was practical. It was carried because it was the Luger. After the war, the flood became a torrent. Returning soldiers brought them home by the tens of thousands. Some were declared, most were not. Inspectors confiscated what they could, but the volume made comprehensive enforcement impossible. The Luger P0 Akit remains one of the most recognizable pistols in history. But its legend was not built in German factories or training grounds. It was built in the hands of Allied soldiers who took it, hid it, and kept it, despite every regulation and every order to the contrary. It was the banned icon, the forbidden trophy, the one possession no rule could stop soldiers from taking. These 10 trophies tell the same story. Regulations were written, consequences were threatened. Soldiers ignored them, not because they were criminals, not because they were undisciplined, but because they had survived something that no regulation could account for, and they needed proof that went beyond medals, beyond citations, beyond anything the Army chose to give them. Every trophy on this list carried risk. Some men were punished. Some were killed by the objects they could not resist taking. Others carried their forbidden possessions for the rest of their lives, showing them to no one, unable to explain even to themselves why they had taken them. The gap between doctrine and human nature was never closed during the Second World War. It was simply crossed, one trophy at a time, by men who decided that what they had taken was worth whatever might follow. If you want the history without the mythology, you are in the right place. Subscribe. The next story is already on the way.